How's it going, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Saturday Night Locals. Here we are in round 2. If you guys did not see round 1, definitely check it out. It is on the channel already, and we played against Vanquish Soul. So if you want to see that match and the commentary that I did to go along with it, should be linked up in the top right for you guys to check out. So yeah, I hope you guys have been enjoying this version of Saturday Night Locals as opposed to just the raw audio. I don't know if I've said this yet, but I prefer doing this just so I can, like, share my side of the story and, give context to certain things that wouldn't have it otherwise. Especially on nights where I feel like I maybe didn't play my absolute best, or there's some questionable plays that I made. So yeah, business as usual here to start this game off. I'm playing against my good friend Colin, aka C Goody, who's actually on Mannadium. He'd been playing Rescue Ace a lot prior to that, so seeing him playing the Mannadium technique kind of jump scared me a little bit. And obviously we get that full hand knowledge there. I think there was like double droplet, imperm, room heart, and one other Mannadium spell. So really easy time comboing here. At this point, I'm just trying to flush out the imperm, and I know Isolde is an easy way to do that, but I know my friend's smart, and what I might consider to be obvious bait isn't really always obvious, especially if you're playing against somebody who's I would say more an above average player. And he knows I have the Diabellstar stuff, which means that if he does imperm the Isolde right now, I will still be able to play through it. Now, does that mean he should not have impermed? That's a different story. Like, there's a couple things I could have done here, right? Like, I could have sent one to try to summon Ricciardetto to bring back the Magus, because that just gets you into Angelica lines, or I could do what I'm doing here and sending 4 and just doing, like, basically 2 warriors. And by the way, I should also point this out. This was before I don't want to say like I misunderstood, but I just missing a step because, there's a new card involved. I guess SP isn't technically a new card anymore as we resolve this Divine Sword. But a new way to do the 2 warriors combo, which, by the way, again, thanks to everybody that commented on that combo video, telling me how to improve the 2 warrior line and how you can end on Isolde if you start Connector or a level 4 monster in any way, shape, or form. Because you can actually just, you don't need to link into the second Isolde. You leave Dempsey and Isolde on field. You summon out Renault, add back DDR out the Connector, for example, make Angelica, and then you link off the Isolde and the others later on. So, yeah. I don't think I knew that at this point. I think I hadn't posted that combo video yet. So still kind of doing things my own way, which, I mean, I know the deck well enough at this point where I can, like, kind of freestyle some combos. But right now I'm just, like, trying to waiting for my opponent to imperm, and they're just not imperming, which is kind of throwing me off. So now it's like, what do I do to, like, try to get him to use the imperm? So I put Diabellstar on field. I'm like, all right, is he going to stop the Diabellstar effect? No, he doesn't stop that. And then I go for Dempsey. And I go Dempsey effect to try go ahead and search for or send a level 4 or lower Fire Warrior from deck to grave, or add it from deck to hand. And I believe my opponent actually imperms here. Now, one thing that I thought would be interesting is, like, let's say I did Isolde send 1, right? Go for the Ricciardetto, which is obviously, in most cases, your primary Snake Eye target. I wonder if my opponent had saw me do that and actually let me summon the Ricciardetto. If they imperm the Ricciardetto, maybe that actually changes things quite a bit. Because now the Snake Eye loses a little value, right? Like, what can the Snake Eye get if Ricciardetto is not in the, like, equation anymore, right? Either it gets Fire Flint Lady or it gets Renault, which have significantly less value in those situations. So, I mean, maybe I played around the imperm a little bit better by not going and sending 1, because, again, that could have made things a little bit greedier, and, like, again, that just conflicts with the Diabellstar stuff, so why would I do that anyways? So he imperms the Dempsey, and I chain Dempsey in response just to get Ogier in grave. Really, I think that was the only reason I did that. So now it's really just a matter of still doing full combo, really. Like, really not much has changed. I know that he still has double droplet and Room Heart, and I think it's like Mannadium Obsession, I think. Yeah, and here I get a little ahead of myself. I was like, you know what? I want to make SP. But I also was like, yeah, I equipped this mod just for a reason, right? I don't want to just, like, equip it to the Dempsey, then link it off for nothing, right? I mean, I could potentially trigger this graveyard effect, but that's one of the best synergies of the Snake Eye stuff, is that you can send off your equips, right? That's literally one of the best things. It's literally free fodder for Snake Eye. So don't forget that. If you have, like I just had there a Modus in graveyard that I didn't need to, you know, have necessarily stay equipped, just easily to send it off. Also, I definitely miszoned that there. I should have not have summoned the Ricky Ardetto in that middle zone. I should have left that open so I could have summoned SP there, and that way I could have put a Emperor Charles the Great on either side of the SP. Although I don't think it matters too much, because, like, I still have this old arrow, I still have the SP arrow, so yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. But now, yeah, it's just basically here business as usual. Turpin is in grave. Ogier, I have not used its equip effect yet. Have not used Turpin's equip effect. And we're going to go Divine Sword here, banishing the Dempsey and the Ricky Ardetto. We're going to use that to trigger Angelica, and she'll go ahead and summon out Roland from the extra deck, and we're going to send a Fire Warrior, end up sending out the Gearfried. Yeah, I just don't think there was a world where one Imperm was stopping that combo. I mean, like, yeah, it really puts my opponent between a rock and a hard place for sure. Because, again, if they Imperm the Isolde, I have the Isolde play, right? Or I have the Snake Eye play. And if they don't Imperm the Isolde, like, I have the full access to Isolde things and Snake Eye on top of that, I guess. But yeah, we have to use the Museum there to bring up the Turpin, because, again, we already used Turpin's special summon effect earlier in the turn to help make Dempsey. So we're not going to be able to end on double Charles Link here unless I have some way to draw into a new field spell. And I wish I had a way to use the Magus, but I think when I hit the grave the first time around, it was a little too early. And I was worried how I was going to stop Droplet, but then I remembered I have the Angelica's Angelic Ring in the graveyard. And a part of me was actually, and I don't know why, because I don't know. It's just where my mental state is at with Yu-Gi-Oh! For some reason, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to stop Droplet with Angelica's Angelic Ring, because if you can send a spell, right? And then I'm kind of screwed, right? Because you can't activate spells in response, but we're not activating in response. We're activating in response to the resolution of Droplet. And I have Droll and Lockbird in hand as like a failsafe, and I know that's notoriously really strong against the Mannadium deck. And so he's activating Imaginings. I thought it was Obsession. Activating Imaginings, and obviously if I don't negate the activation here with Emperor Charles, the Angelica's Angelic Ring will be forced to negate it at resolution, and that means I lose to the Droplet. So I do negate and destroy there with Emperor Charles the Great. So now if he tries to chain Droplet, which I think would probably make the most sense, right? You send off the spell, you send off something else, and at that point it's just like the ring takes care of it, which I think he's just sending off the one. But yeah, the ring will end up taking care of it here. Which, like I said, it took me a second to like put it together. I was like, oh yeah, this is actually just gonna get stopped by the ring. And then, yeah, he actually sends off two other cards there. I'm like, yeah, ring just stops it, right? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah, I thought so. I was nervous for a little bit there. And also another thing too, had I not actually sent 4 off of Assault, I would not have access to the droplet. I didn't even realize that until now, just thinking about that, like doing the route that way, where you send 4 to get Ring alongside Divine Sword and others in Graveyard, right? You have to do the combo line that way, or you have to do the double Assault route, or not double Assault, sorry, double Roland. But here we are in game 2, where I open up a lot of Engine. Open up Fenrir, right, which is technically Engine and also a board breaker. Open up Fire Flint Lady, Renault. Open up Connector, Diabellstar. 3 1-ofs in the opening hand, which again is not like super surprising. I can play a lot of 1-ofs anyways. And my opponent goes Field Spell, gets the Ruum Heart, summons out the Ruum Heart, grabs the Meek, summons the Meek, and then visas to go ahead and pop the Meek. And I think they were debating on their chain links here. They're just basically trying to set up an early Baron to try to play around Nibiru, I think is what they were kind of concerned about. Now, Mannadium is a deck, I will also say, while I'm doing this, is a deck that I have very, very, very little experience. I could probably count on 1 or 2 hands the amount of times I've actually played against Mannadium. Most of the time they've been on stream, and that was like a long time ago. So like I don't really know, and I should. Like I feel like I should, but like I usually only pay attention to the decks that I play, or the decks that I just happen to end up playing against the most, and this is just not one of those decks, right? Like I know a couple basic things, like I know the Contact Fusion guy, Astrolaud. I know that they use some of the Scareclaw stuff, Lightheart. I know Reichhardt's an insane card, right? Searches out the Reborn and then draws a card with the 3 more defense position monsters, right? I know that I can grab the Trap. Like that's an Omni Negate. I know it can make a lot of Synchro 10s, but like as far as like how the inner workings of the deck are, what are considered to be some of the choke points at the time of recording this, and still even right now, I don't actually 100% know. So if there are any Mannadium enthusiasts in the comments, maybe help your boy out and give me some pointers when it comes to playing against this deck for future reference. Yeah, Baron's already been established, and I actually, like, despite not knowing that much about this deck, I really like the way the Mannadium deck plays. It does seem like it does a lot, like something that Crimson Nova Drag in there, tagging out into Bestial Dispotter. And it took a little bit here to think about what he wanted to bring back exactly with Dispotter. But the Contact Fusion element is super sick. The way that all the the different engines kind of work together, like you have the Mannadium engine, you have the Scareclaw engine, and I don't know if there's, yeah, and you can also play like Fenrir, right? Because Fenrir grabs Scareclaw Kashtira, which is technically engine as well. So it's very, very, very similar to how Infernoble Knight can play Fenrir and use it to search Riseheart, which is a Fire Warrior, kind of similar to how they can play Fenrir to grab Scareclaw Kashtira. I guess it also goes to show how busted Fenrir is. Has so much broad spectrum use in so many different decks, like Tearlament, Mannadium, Infernoble, right? Card does a lot, and yeah, that's just about the things that the card can search, not necessarily what the card on itself does. And there's my friend Adam on the right there playing the same deck. We're playing slightly different lists. He's at like 46 cards, which I still don't know why he's on 46 cards. There's just no reason. Like, I'm on 44, which again, like, I don't have a way to get down to 40 comfortably. But I like that. I would not change a single thing about my Infernoble deck, main deck or extra deck. The only thing I would change is usually the side. And obviously that changes with formats. So my opponent is continuing to combo, and little does he know I have 0 hand traps. I don't have any major board breakers in my deck. No Dark Ruler, no Droplet, no... Actually, I think Evenly's in my deck, but I feel like Evenly's... I just don't know how I feel about Evenly against a big combo deck like Mannadium, just because they set up 2 Omni Negates. They set up the Trap, and they set up Baron. At that point, like, if you're putting in a board breaker like Evenly, it might as well just be Dark Ruler. But again, they have the Trap for that too, so... It goes back to good old hand traps. It's not a deck... It's not a deck that you want to try to play through the end board. And hope that a board breaker gets the job done. It's a deck that you want to stop in the process, to like make the end board weaker. And I feel like, and I think it was Pack who said it, is that Infernoble is good at kind of breaking like half boards. Like the deck can definitely go second and break full boards. It's just a matter of like what you put up after breaking the board. Is it ultimately going to be enough to stop the follow-up? And I would say that's like a 50-50 depending on what deck the opponent's on, etc., etc., their knowledge of your deck. But it's very, very good at breaking like 3/4, half boards, and then being able to put up stuff on top of that. And that's why I think it's so important to build the Infernoble deck the way that it is, or at least the way that I have it built. And I'm not saying my build's the end-all be-all, because it's probably not. But like cutting down on a lot of ratios that I thought were like 2 or 3 ofs, and just adding in that much more non-engine. And that's why Fenrir is such a great inclusion, is because it's engine and it's non-engine board breaking capabilities, etc., etc. Like, I think it's imperative. Like, you gotta build the deck right. Because I know some people have said that Infernoble is not good at going second, which again I don't believe that being like 100% true. Is it the best going second deck ever? No, of course not. There's other decks out there that are better at going second. You know, there has been for sure, but to say that it cannot go second whatsoever, I think is just inherently false. And I think in most cases, like decks, and also again, it depends on what deck you're going second against, right? If you're going up against a huge combo deck which puts up tons of interruptions and negates, I would feel like you could say that most decks engines, not just exclusively Infernobles, most decks engines in general, with just engine alone, are going to have a hard time breaking it, save for, you know, a very small handful of decks. And the only one I could probably think of is like Tier. But even that's like kind of RNG based, right? Because of the milling. But yeah, that's why you got to build the deck with plenty of non-engine hand traps, whether you want to play board breakers. Like I played a build of Infernoble at a 3v3, and I main Droplet in the deck, and I loved it. I haven't played it since, because I like hand traps better, because again, I want to like stop the board from being made, as opposed to like trying to break it once it's fully established, right? And I think that that probably holds true for most you know, decks. I think this holds true in general, is like good logic in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, would you rather try to break a deck's end board fully established, or would you rather try to stop it from becoming fully established, right? And then he sums out the Visa Samsara, and there was also that new Mannadium Synchro, that level 6, which apparently just reborns one, and I'm like, this combo is still going, right? He's got Disc Potter, he's got Chang Ying, he's got Baron, and to sum it all up, how about an Appaloosa on top of that, plus the trap, right? And one unknown set, so, and maybe a hand trap in hand, right? So, like, in my head, I'm like, all right, there's no way I'm breaking this board. Like, there's literally no way I'm breaking this board. Like, I'd have to draw, like, Droplet evenly. Some crazy combination like that. And, you know, so it's Appaloosa, it's Chang Ying, it's Baron, it's the field spell, which has a line of text on it, which I didn't know existed, and then probably an imperm and probably the reframing. So I summoned Fenrir, and his Appaloosa is at 2300, or 2400, sorry, because it only has it had 3 materials for its summon. But what I didn't realize is the fact that the Scareclaw field spell makes it so all monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack and defense, I believe it is, for every defense position monster on the field. So Fenrir is actually down by quite a bit, actually. And you know what I'm also realizing is that Chang Ying also has an effect like that as well. So here I am, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players don't read. It still holds true to this day. And I completely forgot about Chang Ying. So yeah, that was a throw right there for sure. What I should have done is just gone battle phase, because I didn't declare Fenrir there because I thought I would be able to actually do something to the Appo. But I was sorely mistaken. I don't even know what that was. I should have just used Fenrir effect like on summon. Anything to bait out some sort of interruption, which I feel like a lot of times when I go into these big boards, I feel like I play too conservatively, and I don't know if that's usually helping me or if it's hurting me. But now I summon out the red layer, and I've already lost a valuable resource in that of the battle phase. So like this game's already unwinnable. I know that. I'm just trying to kind of maybe see if my opponent will mess up, see how far I can get. And he ends up negating the connector. Because I feel like I had a lot, you know what I mean? Like, I had Fenrir, I have connector, and I have a couple warrior extenders in hand, plus Diabellstar, right? Like, maybe there's a world where something could have worked, but into what he has on board, like, maybe that's just wishful thinking. So I summon out Renault, and no effect of Renault. Obviously, there's nothing to add back. And I think I just make Anima. I think that's what I end up doing. And trying to do like an SP line with Anima, try to force something out. SP, try to force something out, and then chain SP again. Because like I can link off the Renault into Anima, put it in that rightmost EMZ to try to take the Changing, which I put it there. Which, I mean, I guess, like, there's no world where the Anima is resolving, I guess, so it's forcing out one thing, whether it's the Appaloosa or it's the Baron. So we go into SP Little Knight, and then we go SP Little Knight effect, and it would be so much nicer if I didn't have already burned my battle phase. But SP effect on summon. I think I targeted Changing with that, and he chains Reframing. And he misread his own trap card, in that I was like, does it destroy? Because like I read Reframing maybe twice. He's like, oh no, it doesn't destroy. But one of the people on the left there, they pointed out that it does destroy. So I would not have SP on field, which we do correct that. Yeah, as you see, it picks up and reads the Reframing there. And I hope I wasn't actually looking at linking into another SP, because there's probably no reason to make a second SP at this point, right? Yeah, so we correct that. And again, my options here are dwindling down. I still have to worry about a Baron, still have to worry about Changing, still have to worry about Dispotter, and there still is, I think, one negate left on the Appaloosa, and who knows if he still has any hand traps even on top of that. So, link into a Sold, obviously, because there really isn't much else that can be done at this given point. And yeah, no surprise there. I admit defeat. So we go into a game 3 where I will opt to go first. And you know, this video has been going for about 23 minutes or so right now, so we gotta we're running a little low on time. Infernoble is not the best deck in time, obviously, because for some reason they made Museum. Look, I get Museum is kind of a crazy card. I'm not doubting that, but 1,200. My friend Pearly says only pay 5. But then again, obviously, my friend is not a soft once per turn. So yeah, but 1,200 is steep, man. It's steep. But anyways, my opponent Ashes the Wanted. And I thought about call buying it, but I'm like, with the way my hand looks, if I call buy this Ash and my opponent has Droll, I am screwed. So I decided to hold on to the call buy in anticipation for a Droll Knockbird, and he did have Droll Knockbird, and I'm glad I kept the call buy. The only downside there is that I have a Droll Knockbird of my own in my hand. So now that's dead. Which I wasn't thinking about that at the time. I was like, oh man, no matter what happens here, like, I have Droll, right? I have Droll for no matter what happens here. Like, if he has Nib on top of this, which I am trying to play around Nib right now with this opening hand. You know, Heritage grab the Ogier, normal Ogier, dump Gearfried, Durendal equip to Ogier, Durendal effect, go ahead and add Renault, special summon Renault, add back the Gearfried. And for those of you that saw the combo video that I posted, this is just like the Ogier Renault combo line. And jokingly tapping the table there while I think about the line, in quotes, the line. Yeah, it just has to be Ogier Renault or any combination of ways to get to those two cards. So in this case, the combo is actually Heritage plus Durendal, right? Same thing. They can be any combination of Infernoble Knight cards. So we go for Angelica, and Angelica is going to grab Field Spell. Field Spell is going to pay 12 to add the Almace, which we don't actually really need Almace right now because we've already got Gearfried back to hand. But I was like, there's no reason to grab like another Durendal right now because we've already used Durendal. So I was like, I figured I'd probably just rather have Almace in hand. And I'm also, again, we gotta play around Nib here, right? Like, what's the possibility of him having a third hand trap right now is probably pretty low. So I was like, you know, don't have to like worry too much about this, but like at the same time, like I'm not trying to walk into a Nibiru unless I absolutely, you know, have to, right? But luckily we opened up a hand that we could beat Nibiru through and through because Ogier was 1 summon, Renault was 2, Angelica was 3, and Roland here is 4. And this is always like it's kind of tricky for me just because like I always got to make sure like, okay, I got to make sure I have an equip on board. And the equip has to be on board when I summon Gearfried, and I need to have an equip engrave to banish for Gearfried, and I need to make sure once I use the equip, right, or once I synchro off Roland, like I still have an equip on field after the fact to make sure Gearfried is not, you know, not alive anymore. So I equip the Almace to Roland. And then, you know, it took me a second to kind of think through and like, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. It was worth the extra couple seconds just to make sure I didn't screw anything up. So we go ahead and Almace equip, and then Almace effect to equip to Gearfried, and then destroy Almace. So there's always an equip on field at this point, while Almace is resolving. And now, there is no longer an equip stuck to Roland, and then now the equip is on Gearfried, so we're free to do whatever we want with Roland. So Turpin effect activates here, and I screwed this up. This was important because I knew I needed to do the double Roland route so I could get access to Angelica's Angelic Ring, because we started with an Angelic route, which means there was no access to getting that card in the graveyard because we didn't make a sold. So I'm trying to amend that now, and I actually just screwed up the combo. I should not have used Turpin's effect of special summon there. What I should have done was equipped Turpin to the Roland and then used Museum to special summon it. And at the point as I'm playing this right now, I didn't realize that. I'm like, I'm in the clear. I can still do this combo. And it's a really, really great combo because like sometimes you'll just naturally start with Angelica, and sometimes Angelica lines don't need a sold. But there is a downside with not making a sold, is that you don't get access to things like Divine Sword. You don't get access to things like Angelica's Angelic Ring, which I know my opponent is on Droplet. So it is imperative that I actually set up that card to be able to beat Droplet and not just auto lose to it. Because if he has Droplet and I don't have Ring, like that's just a wrap, right? So I hard synchro for Roland, and I activate its effect on summon, and here I am coming to the very, very sore realization that I do not have anything engrave that I can equip to Roland that I can special summon with Museum. Because my Turpin was that card, and it is now banished because of its own effect. So at this point, I'm a little flustered. I'm like, damn, I really just messed that up. So I'm trying to recover here in the best way that I can, which is like thinking, you know, is there any other possible way I can get to this Angelica's Angelic Ring? And they're just, because you need to make Roland. So in the end phase, you can send Angelica's Ring, because obviously we didn't send it off as sold. We can send Angelica's Angelic Ring, and then add something, and then resolve Emperor Charles the Great, which will equip the ring, and then something else from deck. So I just sort of plan B, make SP Little Knight, and equip it with the Divine Sword, so it is now at 1900. And we can also make it gain 500 more attack with a Roland effect engrave, because it just equips to any warrior, gives it 500, which is kind of broken. So SP would then go up to 2400, which means Fenrir's crashing into it at that point, and you can't just like normal summon like a room heart or something and beat over it. So that's good to have. And then end phase, Angelica comes back. End phase, resolving Roland, sending an equip, and adding a warrior. And I'm telling my opponent right now, and you can see I'm like kind of shaking my head. I'm telling my opponent like, yeah, I kind of messed that up a little bit, and I like that probably just cost me the game. But you live and you learn, right? Don't make the same mistake I did. That's why I'm kind of making this. That's one of the reasons why I want to do the commentary instead of just letting it roll with a normal local audio. Because I feel like again I had to explain myself for this, that this is not what you're supposed to do. Like this should have ended on, Emperor Charles the Great with ring equipped, with Magus equipped potentially, drawing an additional card in the end phase, maybe ending on SP on top of that as well, depending on what I drew off the Magus. Well, Magus wouldn't be able to draw till end phase, but you know what I mean. Like potentially get an extender at some point to be able to link off the Isold into SP. But alas, here we are. So now I'm just praying my opponent doesn't have Droplet. Thankfully, they're down 2 cards because they had a hand trap twice. And again, at this point, I'm also still thinking, you know what? At least I have Droll and Lockbird in my hand. That's a literal thought in my head at the time I was recording this. I'm like, at least I still have Droll, right? And obviously, us, the viewer, and watching this after the fact, that the Droll is not actually live because Call by the Grave lingers for 2 turns instead of just 1. Which, I mean, that actually makes Call by obviously a little bit more, in quotes, balanced. Because if you could just stop a hand trap 1 turn and then hit your opponent with that same hand trap the next turn, that'd be a little crazy if it worked that way. A little one-sided called by. Made it more like cross out in a sense. And the only reason I'm thinking that is because I'm kind of flustered. I'm just not thinking straight. Kind of forget about the small little details. So my opponent normal summons Reichardt. And he activates effect to go ahead and search. And here's where I droll on res. As he adds the arrival. And I droll on res, and I do remember that I actually can't droll, so don't freak out. Yeah, I do remember that. Like, I can't even droll. And then I was like, you know what? He's like, you don't have to use it. You can just put it back in your hand. That's fine. I was like, oh, it doesn't make any difference at this point, whether the droll is in my hand or if it's in the grave. But yeah, a little miscalculation there. Whoopsies. But, all we got to work with here is SP Little Knight and Gearfried. And I'm notoriously bad when it comes to using Little Knight. I feel like every time I've made Little Knight, it's supposed to be this, like, format warping card. And I just always find the worst possible times to end up using it. It's probably just my poor knowledge of the decks I end up playing against. Which could obviously use some remedying. But we'll get there as time goes on. But, I mean, right now I'm not really focusing on Infernoble at this point because I've actually started playing Earth Machine in anticipation for our donation incentive here to play Earth Machine back at Locals. I took it to Locals for a dry run. I actually went 3-1 with it. So that was fun. And obviously, once we do all these revisits, there will be profiles. There will be Locals footage like this for those decks for 1 Locals each. So, again, the Earth Machine stuff should be on the way sometime next week. So yeah, be excited for that. And then Rika afterwards, then Mermel, then DDD. So I'm not sure. Oh yeah, he just resolved the field spell, the Reichphobia, which I think grabbed him Visas. Good old Visas. And now he's activating Visas to go ahead and destroy Reichardt and special summon itself. At this point, I'm like, do I chain SP here? Do I Gearfried here? And I'm like, nope, that's fine, right? That's got to be all right. And I know Vicious Astrolaud is a potential card, right? So He activates, and oh yeah, I think what I was also worried about here was Baron. He activates the arrival to try to bring something back, and I chain SP in response to banish both Visas and SP. And the Divine Sword should fall off here in a second. And he brings back the right card. Because if I would have let that go through, then he would be completely in the clear to go for Baron. Which, honestly, don't know how much I'd worry about that, actually. Because Gear for you to be chilling at 3,500. But, you know, the Baron could do a lot, potentially, to, like, force out interruptions and stuff on my field. And we still have this monster negate left. He's low on cards. Only 2 cards left here, and he's thinking very hard if he has any way to actually crack the board and set up something of his own. So he goes for Lightheart, and I let that resolve. That adds just adding another field spell, which I don't care about that. And the fact that I banished his Visas and trying to dodge Baron, I've also now prevented him from making Vicious Astrolabe, which also could have been a huge issue. So he ends up admitting defeat there, and we win, despite making a tragic mistake. So yeah, don't make the same mistake I did. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. And last but not least, a big shout out goes to our current Divine level channel members who are Pony Start, Cadillacs Green, Misfit, and HCH Cyber. Thank you guys so much as always for showing me kind and very generous support of the channel.